everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is W.B. Dale, an entrepreneur, author, and deep thinker who operates at the intersection of integrity, responsibility, and human connection. Dale brings a rare perspective shaped by two different worlds. Either in his early career, he worked as a Hollywood actor and television producer, learning firsthand how storytelling shapes perception and influence. Later, he transitioned into the world of business leadership, building organizations grounded in values and long-term cultural strength. Through both experiences, Dale has developed a philosophy centered on reinvention, resilience, and building a life that aligns with your value. Whether he's discussing creativity, leadership, risk, or personal growth, Dale challenges conventional thinking while staying grounded in practical wisdom. Dale, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Sekani, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, yeah, I want us to start from the beginning, right? Hollywood to business leadership. You've experienced both the entertainment industry and the business world. So, what lessons from Hollywood, carried over into leadership?
Yeah, one big lesson that I always think back to, and I had the opportunity to be involved in several productions with different levels of people that are involved in Hollywood. Some lower budget productions that most people have never seen, and some big budget productions that pretty much anyone would be familiar with, or at least the people behind them. And the lesson that always stood out to me, and it just impressed me in such a way that the people that were truly, truly talented, the most talented people that I worked with, they were some of the most humble people. And I always take that into mind in terms of how you show up. Just because you're talented doesn't give you an excuse or a license to treat people poorly or act like you're bigger than others. And I think as I've looked at my leadership model and my perspective as I've gone through my career, I've always thought, I don't care what my title is. I don't care how high up in a company or organization I am. There's always room for humility. So that's the lesson that I took away from my time in Hollywood.
Humility. Okay. All right. So yeah, talking about like reinvention, right? Your story involves multiple reinventions. So what does it take to, start a new chapter without losing yourself in the process?
I call it a foundational principle, right? Some people use a very short way of saying that. I'll use that way too for easy understanding, and that's your why.
Hmm.
As long as you know what your why is, and one of the most powerful life lessons that I have and I've come across mentally is the concept of being inflexible about your why. Don't change that big principle that's driving your life purpose, your dreams, etc. But be super flexible about the how. Because sometimes we actually confuse our how we're getting there with our why. And that's where we run into some challenges. And that's where we run into roadblocks because we have not decoupled the how from the why. And we don't always understand that our limited perspective that we may have in a moment or even the shared perspective of others that we know today is actually not allowing us to embrace all the possibilities for how we accomplish what it is we think we're here to do.
Wow. When you were talking, I was wondering, because we know your how, but we don't know your why. Or maybe I don't know your why. So what's your why?
Yeah, so as I look at my journey, I've always felt impression since I was a young person that my life is here to make an impact for others. It's help them see themselves better, help them pursue their best. I always remember when I was earlier in my career asking, what is it that you want to do with your life? What's your dream? Like, and how are you going to go about accomplishing that? Because I truly believe there's a lot of people that settle. They don't pursue the fullness of their dreams, or they put up some mental block as to why they can't get there. And for me, the reality's always been you can achieve whatever you believe. You can talk yourself into something, or you can talk yourself out of something. You can believe yourself into something, you believe yourself out of something. So my why is to really impact people in a way that helps them live their best life and bring forward their best capabilities in the world. And I do that because I believe in one principle around that. And that principle is very simple. We are here for a reason, each one of us. Okay. I once nerded out and looked at some information and data. I said, what are the odds of you or me being here on this earth in our current form? And to save people some time, I'll just put it this way. It would be easier to win the lottery back to back than it is for you to exist in your current form. So that must mean that there's a reason why you're here. You're not just here to fill up space between the birth date and a death date. And so I think people need to understand and embrace that, that there's a purpose in your life, and pursuing that purpose with, fullness of, belief, and opening your mind to what possibilities are in front of you, I think is a very important thing for people to do.
Um, from the perspective of a young adult who is like just literally finding her purpose, right? I feel like one of the challenges we face as young adults is knowing our purpose, right? We are trying to figure out what is our purpose. So what would you say we need to do, right, in order to, figure out our purpose?
I would say you need to listen to that voice inside. Okay. I mean, for me, that purpose has always been pressed into me, right? I got more formalized around it and how it looks, and how I'm gonna get there. But I think each one of us knows there's something that pulls on you in here if you listen to it. It's an experience you had maybe when you were a kid, something you felt that just you were willing to, I call it die on the hill. Like you saw something, you didn't like how it was going. There's a reason that particular situation or incident triggered you the way that it did, because there's a heartstring. And maybe if you look at what that is, what those experiences are, because maybe there's a few, and where your skills and gifts are. And if you don't know, ask someone. Sometimes we don't see ourselves that well. We don't see what we are great at, or what comes natural and easy to us. And we think, oh, because it's natural and easy to us, everyone can do it. And that's just not the case. Sometimes we undersell ourselves. But if you're able to match those two, what is that? What's that thing in here that got you and hit you a certain way? And where do your skills line up with that? And then if you want to look at a career around it, where can I add value in that space? Where does the world have a gap that I can fill with my heart being, driven to make a change here? That's to me, the powerful trifecta of finding your purpose and then figuring out what to do with that.
Okay, so it's about, listening to the inner voice, right? The voice that tells you, okay, this is your purpose, and then listening to it basically. So yeah, I want to talk about, redefining success, right? So after experiencing both the spotlight and, executive leadership, right? How has your definition of success changed?
Well, I'm blessed to say that I have pursued everything that I wanted to pursue. And I've seen the end, let's say, of it. Like, where does this go? What would it lead? What would it look like for me? So success to me in one arena is understanding the fullness of the possibilities as much as you can, and going down the path that's best for you in that time. And I look at success as continuing to go down that path, right? Towards your purpose, towards your why. I don't, one of the things that I do believe is you should never let anyone else mark your progress and say, oh, you're failing or you're successful because by this point in time, you're here. Because there's a spectrum of success, there's a maturity model of success, and there's a time horizon for when success is going to occur. As some might define it, I'm successful monetarily, I'm successful spiritually, financially, whatever that might look like. So that's why I talk about there's a spectrum of success, but you need to be at peace with where you are in your journey. If you're not at peace with where you are in your journey, I can't call you successful. I can say you're continuing to proceed, and that's fine. I think that's where a lot of us are going to be, and understanding that may be where you are your whole life pursuing, right? Success does not have to be a destination. Success can be part of the journey, the path to success. I'm trying to live a life that leads to this. My purpose may be fulfilled during my time here, but I'm making progress toward it every day. Being able to understand that, being able to embrace some of those realities to me, and knowing that you're continuing to move down the path towards your purpose, that to me is what success looks like to the best form. Because everything else is so, I mean, it's just so fluid. I mean, you can be a star in Hollywood today, a big time star, and in 5 years you aren't getting any roles, you're not cast for anything, nobody really knows you. And that was great for that moment, and maybe you're getting paid, residuals from what you did, but are you not successful anymore? Again, we got to decouple some things. What you do is not who you are. Your product and what you're producing in the world is not who you are. Maybe an outcome and an output that you deliver. And so you have to figure out a way to see clearly yourself and what you're doing. And some of it is actually beyond what I said, is just really defining what does a successful life look like for you? What do you need to accomplish? And don't let anyone else set that for you.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that one, actually. I feel like I've learned a lot already, right? So yeah, talking about like success, I feel like there has to be personal growth that comes with it. So talking about personal growth versus, professional growth. So how do, personal values shape long-term, professional decisions in life?
So I would say everyone that has personal values should keep, and everyone does, but should keep in mind what is something going to ask you to do versus
Mhm.
those values. Certain people will look at the road to success and they see it one way and they see that maybe this doesn't align with my personal values, but it's the way I got to go to get to where I'm trying to be. And I'll do it for the moment. But I think there's a cost that comes with that. I think anytime you sacrifice your personal values, or I call it self sacrifice, there's always a debt that comes with that. And so I recommend that people make decisions in alignment with their values. And sometimes in the moment, those are really hard decisions to make. Like, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do that because it doesn't align, or it aligns, or how it aligns to their personal values. They make that decision. But I will tell you, in my life, in my career, the things that I have done that were in alignment with my personal values, no matter how difficult they were, I always look back on them positively. And the reason I do is because I can look at myself and say, I stood on what I believe in. And if you can't stand on what you believe in, you've sold yourself out. So that's how I look at that.
Wow. Deal. Like this has been a thoughtful conversation, actually, and talking about leadership, reinvention, and living with integrity. Basically, it has been a thoughtful one. And yeah, my podcast, right, is for young adults who are seeking to gain clarity from life. Basically, that's why we bring in professionals like you to come and tell us what to do. So yeah, for someone in their 20s who are trying to figure out their path, what mindset would you encourage them to adopt?
Okay, there's a few things, and this piggybacks on off of what I said before. Um, the first one is this: boundaries create safety. And this gets into your values, right? Your personal values. You set those boundaries up for yourself. And some people feel like when they're younger, they got to just kind of take things as they are, but you don't. You never have. You always have a choice. You always have an option. And actually, when I was young, the first time I had something like this happen, I had a manager who I was looking to for support. I needed them to feel good about me. And they came to me and asked me to do something I didn't believe in. And it would have impacted a lot of people that reported to me. I was managing a large office at the time. And I looked at the manager and I said, I'm not going to do that. And here's why. And I think this is important, communication, right? And here's why I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe that this is the right thing to do. And I'm not just making this as a moral statement about my morals versus yours or anyone else's. I don't think this is the right thing to do for these people and this company. And I'm willing to be accountable for what happens based on my decision. But I believe that my approach for this is the right way to go. And so what the situation was I hired probably 40 people to work in an office to get a major project out. And they were expecting to work for 2 months. And we had done so well, even though we were set up not to be successful originally because we had a shortage in leadership. And my manager said, wow, you guys have done so well. We're actually going to cut this short a month early. So everyone's going to be out of a job next week. But don't say anything. We don't want to say anything right now because then people will get off track and not hit the goal that we try to hit. And we're so close. I said, no, I don't believe that's right. And I told everyone and I let them know, I said, we're going to be closing next week. That gives you some time as much as possible to prepare. for transition. And those of you who want to stick around and help us make this happen, you know, we're in this. And they did. They all did. And we were successful. And so that to me was a better outcome than what they were talking about. And so that's one piece is have those boundaries and don't be afraid to live in those boundaries because when you're young, actually, the stakes are lower, right? You don't have all these different responsibilities that if you stand up and take a stand and it's your first time taking a stand, you don't know how it goes. And you're 45, 50 years old, you're looking at your boss and I don't know if I can say I'm not going to do that because you've never done it before. But if you get used to holding those boundaries today about what you need and what you expect and what your values are, you're going to find it gets a lot easier over time. The other thing is always be learning. That's one thing that I would say is you're trying to figure your path. Always be learning and don't waste a learning moment. Okay, there's things that are going to come up that you have experience with. You're like, why did I work that job for a couple months? 5 years, 10 years later, something from that job pulls back. And you're like, oh, I can use that. That's an edge that I have in this discussion. That's insight that I have. So don't let those opportunities go to waste and don't think that everything is, kind of a coincidence or something. Every step in your journey, if you look back on it, is to prepare you for the next part of your journey. So hold on to those things. Leave a good, I always say, ascend out of your opportunities. So if you're doing something let's just say it's a job, it's an easier example. Sometimes people get a job, they don't like that job, but it was just to get a foot in the door. And then they go and they're like, okay, I got the job I really wanted. I'm just going to bounce on these people. I'm going to leave short notice, or I'm just going to kind of slack off while I'm waiting for the next thing. No, no. I told my younger brother this. I said, listen, you ready to leave your job? You're ready to go to your next opportunity. You need to be gearing up because when you go to your next opportunity, there's a higher level of expectation now. You've got a track record. They're going to expect a higher level of contribution. How do you get there? You don't get there by powering down. You gotta boost yourself up. And I said to my brother, I said, listen, when you're ready to leave this role, you should be ready to hire your replacement. You should be ready to have trained your replacement so that your boss is now looking at you and they're patting you on the back and they're saying, go on to the next thing. I'm so happy for you. Look what you've done for me and my team. Look how you helped us succeed and you did a great job. And then you got a lifelong supporter because they always remember how you left. People always remember how you left. So keep those things in mind.
Thank you so much, actually, for this encouragements and advice. And I hope my listeners would make very good use of this, actually, because I personally, I will. So yeah, this brings us to the final segment. It's called the rapid fire segment, right? So
Okay.
starting now, right? So success is
Success is continued pursuit
right.
of your why.
Okay, you can give us a why.
My why?
Yeah.
My why is I want to impact and change lives. I want to flip lives.
All right. Okay. And yeah, integrity means
Integrity means doing what you say you're going to do and living into your values.
okay. And yeah, leadership requires
Sacrifice and commitment, but most importantly, accountability.
capability. Okay. So risk teaches us.
Risk teaches us how to analyze and be resilient. And it also teaches us where growth lies because you won't grow without taking risk.
Okay. All right. And yeah, creativity thrives when
It thrives when
does
there's
creativity thrive?
when there's curiosity and openness.
Okay. When there's curiosity and openness, right? Noted. And yeah, failure becomes useful when
I don't believe failure is ever useful because of this. I don't believe you actually fail unless you quit. So I don't believe quitting is useful unless there's one scenario when something that you're doing is harmful to yourself or others. But other than that, quitting, you don't fail at something unless you quit.
that's a very interesting take, actually. That's very interesting. And I wish we could talk about that, but So if you don't mind, we could do a part two, right? Where we can do like a deep dive into like some selling questions I've not been able to ask because of time
Yeah.
constraint.
That
All
sounds
right.
great.
And yeah, okay. And finally, right, a meaningful life includes
Doing something that lives beyond you, whether it's a tangible thing like resources or whether it's your impact on people.
okay, all right. So thank you, Dale. This has been amazing. And where can listeners get to know more about you and what you do?
So I'm an author. I'm a published author, and I have a child, book series coming out for children. You can follow me on Instagram, w.b.dale on Instagram. That's the best place.
Hey, Instagram. Yeah, after this, I would actually be following you right now on Instagram. And yeah, to my listeners, thanks for tuning into Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes.